Hey, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Good
Hi,
afternoon.
good afternoon. Hi,
Hello.
hello. All righty. Uh, okay, let me share my screen. Okay, share screen. It should be there just about now. Okay, now, so you guys know, okay, let me see how many are here. I see 8 people, and in the discussion board, let me. Well, only 6 people. So please, I mean, it's obvious that 2 people here haven't yet signed into today's forum. So do it ASAP, right? This is your um, physical proof of attendance. This is your sign-in sheet. Without this, you cannot prove that you are here. Okay. All righty. So I'm sure over the weekend you would uh, you have noticed that the uh, homework one was issued, right? And that was issued on Friday. Um, but it's going to be due this Wednesday, this coming Wednesday. Obviously, I was being too ambitious at the beginning because I allocated only 2 days, Wednesday and Thursday, for the entire topic one. I mean, actually, I was a little mistaken. Um, the simple interest can be covered by that by those 2 days, but then simple discount I still need at least today and tomorrow for simple discount. So that's why then the first homework will be due on Wednesday. But then again, you must have also noticed that the videos in topic one are already gone because yeah, they are there only for 5 days. They are posted. So anything that is older than 5 days, how do you find it? How do you? Well, um, I also posted this today. Um, I have YouTube channel. I don't know how to make you subscribe. I just I have made it. I think uh, you can subscribe to the channel owner, but the basically it's the playlist. Each course is by the playlist, and I have uh, at least four courses on YouTube. So they are all 4 different playlists. Uh, subscribing to one of basically subscribing to one of the playlists, I think will let you have access to all other courses. But the all other courses are unless you take those courses, they are not easy. But anyway, so this is the playlist name. Um, so if you go to YouTube, this is mine. This is not mine. I don't know who made this. There are 31 subscribers, but this is not my this is not my channel because in my channel it's only um, this is the just one playlist. Parents and students are getting bombarded. Just one playlist, and oh, I have 60 subscribers. That's still very poor. 60 subscribers. But so you can look up all the past uh, and even if it is not okay, playlists. So even for, I made playlists for every semester. I'm not doing it anymore because it's such a it's just uploading. But then I've done it. I mean, every live session recordings, I post them in the Blackboard anyway. So you don't need this. And I had even summer 21 business 210 summer 21. That was what I that was the last thing. Since then, I never created another playlist. So basically, you know where to look up, um, where to look for the past videos. Okay. Now, so today we're moving on to a simple discount. We already did, last week, simple interest. So what is simple discount? And first of all, what is discount? So you can think of it this way. This is, I have to, finger it. Okay, so let me blow it up a little. So discount is something like this. Um, suppose you have a bond. Okay, so promissory note. Let's say promissory note. What's a promissory note? Promissory note is an IOU, of course. It's a simple way to, but it's not some. Sometimes it can be misleading. I mean, it can mislead people to think that you can write an IOU. I mean, the name is promissory note, so it sounds like it sounds like it's a promise to pay. So you borrow money, but in reality, there is no such thing as personal promissory note. I mean, you can write a promissory note to your parents or to your siblings and borrow $1,000, or to a very good friend on a personal level. But your promissory note is not a commercial paper. In other words, it's not an official commercial paper. It has no. Uh, your parents will just lend you $1,000 because they're your parents, or your best friend will lend you $1,000. Probably they won't think about getting it back. I mean, hopefully, if they get it back, it's good, fine, good. But even if they don't get it back, they will just give it to you. I mean, they will, as a gift, in goodwill. I mean, totally in goodwill. So that's not really promissory note, right? If you're really uh, but so promissory note is nothing but a paper. Of course, for it to have any legal power, it has to be certified. But even if it is certified, um, it is only between you and the lender. There's no legal. It cannot be traded. Cannot be traded. So the commercial paper I'm talking about or the promissory note that I'm talking about, is the promissory note being, used in B2B. Okay, and I'm sure you should all know what B2B means. It's business to business. So usually a promissory note is uh, a commercial paper issued by one company to another company. And it's quite obvious why they do that. Uh, so between a vendor and a or service provider or what any vendor of the material to a manufacturer, right? I mean, if you sell something, normally you would expect a payment in cash or credit card or in check. But in business to business, they use promissory note. Okay. Um, so the promissory note looks like a check, and it looks almost like a check. The only difference is that the promissory note has the maturity date. Maturity date means, um, uh, we will pay you in 30 days or 60 days or something like that. Normally, the maturity of the promissory note is somewhere between 30 and 60 days. Okay, theoretically, it can be up to 1 year, but obviously, no one will accept a promissory note that has 270 days or 360 days to maturity. Theoretically, only theoretically, it's possible. But usually, small businesses are the vendors, suppliers of raw material and things like that. And if you're a small business, going without getting payment for like more than 90 days, it's like suicide, right? If someone pays you with a promissory note that has very long maturity, it's like they don't care if your business fails or not, or deliberately they want you to fail deliberately. Uh, so why? Because if you fail, if your business goes bankrupt and fails, that you go bankrupt because if you can't collect your payment, if you can't collect the payment, you go bankrupt. And if you go bankrupt, they won't have to pay at all, right? Uh, so that's very malicious, very malicious, very, criminal mind. But Donald Trump did the business exactly in that way, right? He stiffed. I mean, what's the word? I was, um, uh, yeah, stiffed them off. He stiffed up his vendors and. But anyway, in B2B, so promissory note is a uh, uh, something they uh, very commonly used. Um, let's say the buyer paid with promissory note of $10,000. Okay. Now there are two types of promissory notes because think about it. From the if you receive the promissory note, it's like giving them a short-term loan, isn't that right? If you are the seller and the buyer paid with promissory note, let's say 60-day promissory note. Uh, time left. Okay, so time left 60 days. Then it's like, well, it's also called deferred payment. They deferred payment for 60 days. From your perspective, it's like giving them a 60-day loan, short-term loan, right? And it can be either interest bearing or non-interest bearing. They can pay, let's say, 10% interest. Think about it. Nobody, nobody likes promissory note. If you're the seller And if you receive promissory note, obviously, if you could, you would prefer receiving cash, right? Um, or at least credit card, because with credit card you'll get paid anyway within a couple of days, and then after that it's between the credit card company uh, and the buyer, right? The one who paid with promissory note. So uh, to induce sellers to accept promissory note, usually they will pay interest. Think about it. If I received promissory note, 60-day promissory note, $10,000 promissory note for 60 days, that will mature in 60 days. That means I will have to forego the opportunity to earn interest for 60 days, right? If I had received already cash, then I can put it in the bank and earn interest for 60 days. Already I will, I will earn interest. But if they pay with promissory note, that takes away that opportunity from me. So they will obviously, that's what will discourage me from taking promissory note. So to facilitate or encourage taking promissory note, they will pay interest, right? If at least something similar to the bank interest rate. Think about it. If it is equal to the bank interest rate, if the interest they have to pay is equal to the bank interest rate, then they have no more incentive to pay with promissory note. Isn't that right? Mm-hmm. Think about it. They want to defer payment for 60 days. And for 60 days, if they can put $10,000 in the bank and earn interest for 60 days, and that may be the reason they are paying with promissory note, because they can use that money for 60 days, right? So if they have to pay you interest, then it better be, for them, it better be less than 10%. It better be less than bank interest rate, so that there will be some difference, right? But anyway, from the receiving end, I mean, if you're the recipient of the promissory note, you don't have that choice. I mean, most of the times you're at the selling end, and if you're at the selling end, and usually if it is buyer's market. Now you understand what buyer's market is. Anyone understands what buyer's market is? Anyone doesn't know what buyer's market is? Can anyone explain what's the difference between buyer's market and seller's market? Anyone?
Yes, Professor. So buyer's market, I think, people who buy the stuff.
People who buy what? Tops?
Like
What
products,
do you
like
mean?
everything, like this, like buyer market, right?
Yeah, buyer's market. So what is buyer's market? Can you define that?
So people who like buy products and stuff, this is the buyer markets.
I mean, basically, in the market, that's where the market is. That's what the market is. Buyers buy, sellers sell. That's what the market is. So that doesn't sound like a very clear explanation. I mean, then what is seller's market? What's the difference? Anyone?
Could the buyer's market be the price of the product that the seller put for the buyer to sell?
Mm, well, that's what is happening in the market anyway. I mean, um, seller asks for a certain price. Seller expects to receive certain price. Buyer uh, buyer has to either pay that price, or I mean, what else can buyer do? I mean, buyer will have to either pay the price that the seller wants, or, um, but the other thing can happen. I mean, seller has to accept the price that the buyer is willing to pay. I mean, it's called, ask and bid, right? But it's in an auction. In an auction, there's a bid and ask, right? If anybody bought something on eBay, you must understand what is the difference between bid and ask. But usually, that doesn't happen. I mean, when you go to an Apple store, you want to buy an Apple computer, is there any way you can just offer the price that you want to pay? And is there any way you can is there any occasion it can really happen? You go to an Apple store and offer the price, and they accept it, and is it like that?
No.
No. So actually what happens, if you go to the Apple store, the price is already set. And so it's either you pay that price or not. Isn't that right? So the case of the example, case of Apple that I gave you, right? And in reality, most of the times, if you go to any market, if you go to any place, a supermarket or Apple store or Home Depot or Target, you have to pay the price that is set by the seller, right? That is called so in other words, who calls the shot? Who calls the shot? Seller calls the shot, right? That's called seller's market. Then if the opposite, if the buyer calls the shot, then that's called buyer's market, right? You understand? But can it happen? Yes, it can happen. I mean, can buyer's market happen? I mean, seller's market is something you already understand. I mean, that's usually what it is. Why? But how can the buyer's market happen? But why is there a seller's market in the first place? Huh? Why is you go to Target, you go to whatever, you go to B&H or J&H, whatever, you go to Apple store or Nike store. It's not buyer's market, it's completely seller's market. Why? It's simple, because there are fewer sellers than buyers. Fewer sellers than buyers. Right? Because there are more buyers than sellers. But think about it. You turn the table around, and there are fewer buyers than sellers. There's only, think about it. Then buyer calls the shot. If there are 10 sellers and you are the only buyer, you call the shot. Isn't that right? You can choose the seller who offers the lowest, who asks for the lowest price. You can choose, right? But in reality, there are more buyers than sellers, because there are huge number of consumers, but just a small number of manufacturers. If there's only single seller, right? But a lot of buyers, that's called what? That's called monopoly, isn't it right? That's called monopoly. But the opposite, there are huge number of sellers, but just a single buyer. That's called monopsony, right? So think about it. Why? So in B2B, also in business to business, right? In B2B, where is that? Where's my canvas? Okay, in B2B, it's pretty much the same. There are not manufacturers are generally big players, manufacturers like Apple, Hewlett-Packard Computer, or Dell, Tesla. Manufacturers are generally huge players, big players, and vendors to these manufacturers are small businesses. They are relatively small and unimportant, right? Think about it. To Tesla, there are so many. In car manufacturing, right? Not just Tesla. In automobile manufacturing, there are small vendors, small, manufacturers of the parts, small vendors, the manufacturers of the parts. There are many of them. But compared to the number of these vendors, the number of car manufacturers is limited. So it becomes buyer's market. Okay. Sometimes it's not necessarily so. For example, even in car manufacturing, some parts manufacturers are also big players, and they don't have to sell only to one car company. They can sell to many. Tires, think about it. Tire companies are not small vendors, right? Tire companies. And in computer manufacturing, computer manufacturers are not the giant. Not only they are not the only giant players. At the other end, chip makers, semiconductor makers are also huge, right? But so, but there are so many small manufacturers that supply the parts to the computer manufacturers, like keyboards, small parts inside, mouse, peripheral, and things like that. But which are generally low-tech parts. But if it is high-tech parts like microchips, LED display, batteries, all these things, CPUs, the manufacturers of these parts are also industry giants, right? But otherwise, it's the balance, the status quo, or the balance of power. Obviously, small vendors don't have the power. I mean, if the big manufacturer just, as I said, they can pay interest on the promissory note, or they don't have to pay any interest on the promissory note. Even if they don't pay any interest on the promissory note, sometimes if you're a small seller, if you're a small business selling parts to a large manufacturer, you have to oblige. You can't say no, right? You can't say no to a big manufacturer like Tesla or Ford or General Motors, right? Makes sense? It's not because obviously if you say no, then they can take their business always, they can always take their business somewhere else, right? And you might say, oh, then you can also take your business somewhere. No, you're a small guy, so if you and the big manufacturers of computers or cars, they already have their supply channel. You may and to change the product to make the product fit another manufacturer's specification. It's going to cost a lot. For a small business like you, complete overhaul of your production line to match the product specification of another company, that's going to be a huge risk for you. right? So small guys are not really at liberty. You should understand that small guys are not really at liberty of saying no. So sometimes, big guys, big companies are paying you a promise 60-day with 60-day promissory note at zero interest, but you can't say no. You'll have to swallow it, right? But that's the reality. But so let's think about it. This is called non-interest bearing note. Of course, then this is called interest bearing note. And non-interest bearing. Of course, you're paying 0%, so it's non-interest bearing. I noticed that I can do add another layer. Okay. How do I go there? Okay. So in our example, so let's say you received $10K and 0% interest, non-interest bearing note. So then think about it. You'll have to wait 60 days times 60 days at 0%. At 0%. So if you wait 60 days and present it to the issuer, you will collect 10K in 60 days. However, small businesses are usually very short of cash. They are really stripped of cash. Small businesses can, without constant cash flow, they can go back. They can go bankrupt even tomorrow. There are that's the reality of small businesses. They cannot even last 2 weeks without the cash flow. Okay, so usually what they do is they take the promissory note to the bank. Okay, bank or a financial company, and when they and then they basically sell it to the bank, right? They basically sell it to the bank. They call it factoring. In this case, the bank or the financial company is called factor. The factor is basically, what do they do? But they don't pay them 10K. They will pay something less than 10K. Okay, which is called proceeds. A symbol for that is D. So in other words, discounted amount. They pay you something less than 10K. So suppose you get 9K. So think about it. This 10K breaks down into it breaks down into 9K and 1K. So what that tells you, what that means is that you take 9K and the bank takes 1K for their, service for, doing this. And then 60 days later, the bank will take it to the issuer of the promissory note, and then they collect 10K from the issuer. That way, they first paid 9K to you, 9K. So basically, and then they get, a 10K from the issuer of the promissory note. So they effectively made 1K for doing this service, right? And the service is basically what? What service did they provide? They provided a service of cashing in that promissory note for you, but for a fee. Okay, the fee is in this case 1K. Okay, so this is like, if you think about it, let me add another layer. So it's like splitting the principal into proceeds and bank discount. Of course, bank won't do that for free. It's, they will have to take something from this. So B stands for bank discount, which is, bank's cut. Bank takes this cut. And D is your cut. Originally, you had 10K, promissory note of 10K. The bank took 9K. I mean, you received 9K, and then the bank took 1K from it. So it's like paying interest upfront. From your end, from your perspective, it's like paying interest upfront for using 9K. For using 9K, you paid the interest of 1K upfront. Okay, makes sense. In my lecture video, I compare it to some pawn shop, a pawn broker, or mafia, right? If you borrow money from mafia, right? If you borrow money from mafia, you need to borrow 10K, right? But they take interest up front, and you get only 9K, but you pay back 10K. So that way you pay you pay interest of 1K. So in this case, if you think about it, as I said, the bank discount is like bank discount is a kind of interest, but the interest that you pay upfront, right? Not at the end, but upfront. And so D stands for 9K is what you take. That stands for, but it's called D. D stands for proceeds. Okay, so it's proceeds, but D is the symbol for that. B is bank discount. So that's the bank's cut, right? And you might think, oh, so you paid 10% interest because it's 1K and original amount is 10. No, it's actually it's called it's not 10% interest, it's 10% discount rate. Why? Because it's 10% of 10K, that's right, but you discounted it by 10%, so that the bank discounted by 10%, so that what belongs to you, what goes to you is only 9K. So if you think about it, you paid 1K for receiving 9K. So that's like, it's like, for receiving 9K, you paid interest of 1K. So if you think about it, this is it's more than 10K. It's actually, if you calculate it, something like 11.11K. Okay, in terms of interest rate, it's 11.11K. Okay, and discount rate is 10%. Let me add one more, and so here we come to a new concept called effective interest rate. Effectively, so I use asterisk to denote effective interest rate. Think about it. You paid effectively 11.11%. I mean, discount rate was 10% because you discounted that $10,000 at 10%. But it is effectively 11%, 11.11% that you paid. Okay. So effective interest rate is you always greater than the discount rate. In other words, you originally had the promissory note. You originally had the promissory note of 10K, right? If you could only wait 60 days, then you could have collected 10K. But because you cannot wait 60 days, you discounted it, right? You broke it into B, bank discount, and D, the proceeds. And the bank discount is 1K, and you received 9K. That 1K is bank's cut. Bank takes, and 9K is what you take. So you paid effectively 1K to get 9K, right? So if you think about it, I call this, this is my own way of calling it type 2 loan, right? Type 2, like mafia loan. You borrow $10,000 from mafia, you'll have to pay interest upfront. They will not wait, right? They won't wait until they won't wait on for the whole year or for 60 days for you to come up with the full future value. They will take the interest upfront. I call that type 2 loan. It's my own terminology. But if that's the case, bank discount is effectively the interest that you pay. Another thing is, so how do we express the bank discount? It's principal times discount rate times T. Okay. Now think about it. What is interest? Interest is P times R times T, right? What is bank discount? It's a kind of interest, but interest upfront. P times D times T, and D is the discount rate. If they use discount rate, 10% discount rate, of course, the time has to be, so in our example, to be exact, is 10K times 10%, right? 0.1 times 60 days. 60 days is 60 over 360, right? So this is actually what bank discount rate will be. I mean, the bank discount will be, right? It's 1 over 6, right? So if you calculate this, in our example, so 10,000 times 0.1 times 1 over 6. Oh, no. Ah, I don't like I don't like this Chromebook calculator because it's not. So I'm gonna. So let's think of it this way. And since I'm already here, I don't know why I didn't. Why is it all filled in? I should. Um, so it's a simple. It's a simple example. Let me. Oh, it's doing. Okay, so let me just. What just happened? Okay, let me change this to 10,000. Discount rate 10%. 60 days. And then we know how to convert this into everyone, are you with me? Are you guys with me?
Yes, Professor.
Yes, we're following.
Yes,
Yes.
Yes.
Professor.
Okay. I know it's a little, it may be a little boring, but um, the idea behind it is, I mean, obviously, you can't do without the idea behind it. So we need to convert this into years. So I will use ordinary year. Okay, and don't panic. It's because Excel in this case, in this example, it is pre-formatted to round. So I'm gonna increase the decimal. Okay. Okay, that looks like sufficient decimal places. So then the bank discount is B times D times T. Okay, hit enter. Oh, so that was correct all along. So this is how much they will take from this promissory note, and the bank will pay you the difference. I mean, that's what the bank takes, and the bank will take the difference. I mean, bank takes one B, the bank discount, and this is what they will pay you. You get this, okay, but you're paying 166 to the bank, sort of, it's sort of like a service fee, because the bank is taking over the risk from this point. Isn't that right? So suppose you took it to the bank on the first day. You took it to the bank on the first day. That means, on day one, you took it to the bank. Then how many days are still left? 60 days. So that means, the bank is taking over the risk for the remaining 60 days. Obviously, they can't do this for free. And what's the risk? The risk here is the risk of default. Default by whom? Default by the issuer of the promissory note. Of course, the promissory note, if this is, you generally don't accept promissory note from a very iffy company, iffy business, right? Very shady, or a business that is very unknown, not very well known. You don't take promissory note. Usually, you accept promissory note from the buyer who has long established business relationship with you, right? Let's say Intel, Intel buys, obviously they will have to buy copper, because Intel is chip maker. They will have to buy copper, silicon, and things like that, silicon or silica or whatever, to make microchips. And the vendors of copper and silica, and they are vendors, and they are selling to a big buyer, industry giant named Intel. And Intel can, most of the times, they will pay with promissory note. And if they receive, they are happily accepting promissory note, because Intel is a company that is not going to default on their promissory note, right? But let's say if you receive the promissory note from a company that you don't know, or generally not well known in the industry, you will be very cautious to, first of all, you will be unwilling. You're very reluctant to take promissory notes from them, but you have to sell something. I mean, you have to do business. I mean, you have to sell your revenue. There's no revenue unless you sell something. You sell, but you receive promissory note. But if this company is not very well-known company, it's very it's risky to, what if they default? So nobody will do this service for free. They will have to, obviously, they have to make something out of this. Okay. So I want you to all, do this with me. The first example we did. Now, if you go to, okay, let me use, and where is this thing? Canvas. Okay, so now we can rewrite. We already know that the promissory note, face value of the promissory note, that is, like the principal in this case, right? Principal, $10,000. It breaks down into 9K and 1K. And if I rewrite B by its own definition, in other words, if I rewrite Um, if I rewrite the right-hand side, right? I can rewrite it by its own definition. I mean, B has its own definition. B is basically what? P times D times T, right? Oh, I'm going to have to rewrite it over again. So, okay, again, P equals D plus P times D times T. Isn't that right? That's the definition of B. Then if I, because, if I collect the like terms, collecting the like terms, you'll have to collect, this is P, this is P. In other words, P times D times T is the like term with P. So you collect the like terms, then it will become P minus P times D times T equals B, right? And you factor out the common factor. P is one factor. 1 minus dt, right? Which is D now. So we can now solve for D directly. In other words, without calculating B first, you can go to D directly. In other words, how much, when you are selling the promissory note to a bank, as long as you know the discount rate, how much is the proceeds, how much you will. So of course then D is P times 1 minus dt. Okay. So in our example, right, and let's go back to well, first we got this first, and then found the difference between the two, but we can go directly to this. The second row, let's do this. Everyone do this with me. And to do this with me, first you will have to delete all the numbers in the highlighted cell, right? So 5,000, our formula is, not there. Our formula is what? P times 1 minus D times T. Okay. Now, 90 days, if you turn 90 days into a year, right? And if it is ordinary, I already locked it. But if the problem already, the problem said use exact year, you don't have to do this. You'll just, I must have locked it here. No, I didn't lock it there. So then I can just drag it down like this. Okay. So if it is exact year, right? Now, so we got this, and then the bank discount is the difference between the two. That's the difference between the two. Okay, so we got it. Now, if I lock it here, F4. Okay, I'll lock it there. And then I drag it down if all of these are. If all of these are exact interest here, right? And then you can drag it down, or here, I believe, since this is yellow highlight, that it wants you to actually find this first, which is then, 500 times 9% times T. And then the proceeds are the difference between the two. Okay. Now the numbers, you can change the numbers. I mean, this could be 7,500. The rest of them will automatically adjust. Okay. Now, here's the thing. Remember as we started on the simple interest rate, I said simple interest rate is used in the money market. Okay. Simple interest is used in the money market, and the compound interest rate is used in the capital market. So in money market, which is less than 1 year, right? And I've been telling you, nobody actually uses, nobody uses simple interest for the time that is, for the time that is greater than 1 year. If the time is greater than 1 year, you don't use simple interest rate. You don't use. But why did I, our examples were longer than 1 year, but in reality, if the maturity is longer than 1 year, then compound interest is being used, not the simple interest rate. But we had to do that because we had to do the examples with longer time frame, long term, like just to get the hang of the way the simple interest rate works. But in reality, in the short-term financial market, most of it is this. The short-term financial market, most of it is about discounting the promissory notes, right? It's about discounting the promissory notes, not. So simple interest rate is used for discounting the promissory notes. It's not like nobody lends money for 30 days or 60 days in future value. In other words, what I'm saying is you don't what I'm saying is that you don't you don't lend money for 30 days and earn interest this way, right? You don't do that. In the money market, right? You don't do that. Instead, how they borrow or lend money is by discounting. In other words, also by promissory note. So, for example, if you receive if you receive promissory note, you are giving a loan. You're giving a short-term loan. You're lending money. It's like lending money. Why? Because you didn't actually lend money to them, but you are deferring the payment. They owe you $10,000, but by taking the promissory note, you are basically offering them a loan for 60 days. Make sense? You're giving them, so because they don't have to pay immediately, they have the use of this money for the next 60 days, right? They can use this money for the next 60 days. So it's like you have given them a short-term loan for 60 days, right? So selling promissory note is borrowing money, right? Okay, and vice versa. If you receive promissory note, it's like lending money. Now, so I told you, basically, if it is not interest bearing, right? P breaks down into D and B. If it is interest bearing, it's the future value that breaks into D and B, right? So if it is that means your promissory note carries interest. Let's say your promissory note carries 10% interest. Then think about it. The future value on the promissory note will be P times 1.1 times, if it is 60 days, 60 over 360. Small space. I can't. So I'm going to rewrite it somewhere. If it is interest-bearing note, this is basically P times 1 plus R times T. Isn't that right? And this will break down. Suppose this is 10%. Let's say time is 1 year, just to make it easier, right? And this is 10K. 1 year later, of course, we know there's going to be 11K there. So if the promissory note is interest bearing, you will need to, discounting it will require, it's the same thing, but instead of P being here, if this is P principal, then it's non-interest bearing. It's the case where this promissory note is not paying any interest. If it is, it's the same thing. You only split it into. So in this case, B is FB times D times T. Okay? Then again, if I rearrange, right, I move it to the other side, right? Move this to the other side, collect the like terms. And in the left-hand side, then it's FV. You factor out FV, 1 minus DT equals B. D. Okay, so it's the same thing. Whether D, whether this one is P whether the left-hand side is P or FV, right? Structurally, there's no difference. Of course, if it has, if there's money, bet on the, um, what am I trying to say? Uh, I guess this is the right time to take a break because it's already almost 4:15. So we'll take a 10-minute break and reconvene at 4:25. Okay. Uh, all righty. Any questions so far? Okay,
Professor?
Shirley. Yeah, Shirley. Yes.
Yeah, I wanted you to go over why in line 14 and 15 on that problem that you used a different formula for D and B compared to uh, line 12 and 13.
Line.
Yes,
Okay,
in
I'm
the
gonna.
D and the B section, you use a different formula compared
Yeah, yeah,
to,
yeah.
yeah, and I'm trying to
Here.
understand why.
Okay. Here. This is the. Um, if your primary solution, in other words, if your primary concern is how much is the bank discount, you will solve for bank discount first, right? Once you have solved for bank discount, then D is simply the difference between the two. Isn't that right? But it's if your primary focus is proceeds. Okay, here actually I did it like actually I did it like this. Um, let me. I will. I will have to change the color. That should be that, and this should be the drab. So, um, but here, the your primary concern is what is the proceeds. Then you can go ahead and solve for the proceeds, straightforward. And then the bank discount is simply the difference between the two, right? In other words,
Yeah.
okay, all righty. So I guess that must have answered your question. So
Is that the same as the one under it? Did you do it like the same way? The next line where the 7,000 is?
yeah, this one, the focus was this. Primary focus was this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the primary focus was B, and then D is the difference between the two, right?
Okay. So the
All
the
right,
formula is based on which one is the primary focus. Is that what you're saying?
right.
Okay,
Right. And
got
then
it.
you see, yeah, D is this, where B is this. I mean, in our example, uh, instead of FE, it was all P because it was non-interest bearing. But if it is interest bearing, we'll go into that example later after the break. Okay, so
Okay.
let's take a 10-minute break. All right, we're back. We're back. My connection is poor now. Low quality video. Okay, Shirley, you have a question, Shirley?
No, that was a mistake. Sorry, you
Yep.
answered it
Okay.
already. Thank
All
you.
righty. All righty. All righty. You're welcome. Now, so let's go into the next example. I don't know why my this is all filled in like this, but I don't know if your sheet, if your Excel sheet has all these uh, filled in, please clear out. Please delete all, not delete the cells, but delete the contents. Okay, please clear the contents. So here's the next example. Clear the contents. Okay. So our next example, discounting the interest-bearing notes. Okay. So I said discounting the promissory notes are basically another name for commercial paper. When we say commercial, um, I don't know if you have taken Finance 100 or if you haven't. It doesn't matter. Still fine. Basically, when businesses borrow, right? When businesses borrow, borrowing is called loan, right? If you go to the bank and borrow, that's loan. But uh, businesses borrow through selling bonds in the long term. Uh, Businesses borrow money by selling bonds, and bond is the name for long term borrowing. Okay. Long term means always by arbitrary. There's a line, arbitrary line between long term and short term in financing accounting, which is 1 year, right? Anything greater than 1 year, any maturity greater than 1 year is long term. Of course, for every borrowing, there is you have to pay interest. Sometimes but sometimes there are bonds that don't pay any interest. So the term there is there. So there's interest-bearing bond, non-interest-bearing bond, and non-interest interest-bearing bonds are generally called coupon bonds. Non-interest-bearing bonds are called zero coupon bond. You might wonder why do they then uh, why do they even buy a zero coupon bond if bond is basically a loan, uh, but it's tradable. It's in other words, when we say loan, a loan is just between the borrower and lender, right? And this borrower and lender relationship, um, traditionally, it goes on until it continues until the loan is paid off, right? So if you borrowed from Bank of America, if you got a loan from Bank of America until the loan is over, you pay to Bank of America. That a borrower lender. It's no longer like that. Uh, but bond is if you borrow through selling bond, that if I usually the companies sell bond, right? Companies sell bond. The company becomes the borrower, and if you buy the bonds, you become a lender. It's called bondholder or creditor or lender or debt holder. It goes by many names. Um, but I don't have to. So if I bought a bond from company A, company X, let's call whatever, company X sold bond. So I have $1 million worth of bonds. I'm the bondholder or creditor or the lender, and company X is the borrower. And if this bond is for 10 years, if the maturity is 10 years, uppercase T, that means maturity. If the maturity is 10 years, you might think, I will hold this bond for 10 years up to maturity, and then I will redeem or reclaim my $1 million plus interest until then. But in reality, you don't hold it for 10 years. You can sell this bond anytime you want. You can sell this bond anytime, right? Because there's a market for trading stocks and bonds. Financial assets are basically tradable, meaning I don't have to hold it forever. I don't have to hold it until maturity. I can sell it anytime I want, because there is someone, as long as there is someone who is willing to buy it from me, right? I can sell it. And then from that point on, the new holder of the bond is the lender to this company X, right? And so company X doesn't need to pay interest to me anymore. Usually, if you have coupon bonds, you receive coupon, which is another name for interest. You receive interest every year or every 6 months until maturity, and at maturity you receive the full face value of the bond. But you can sell anytime, and then whoever buys it from you will be entitled. They will be entitled to receive. So the interest goes to them, right? And when they sell it to another person, another buyer, that buyer will. So whoever is the last person, whoever is the last bondholder that presents it to the company, will collect the face value of the bond, maturity value of the bond, okay, and collect interest from the point he or she bought it. Now, promissory note is, so bond is a loan. Promissory note is just short term. It's the same thing, but just short term, right? Promissory note is the same thing, but just for short term. And it's also, there's, coupon and zero coupon, or interest bearing or non-interest bearing. Interest bearing or non-interest bearing. Okay. Another name for promissory note is commercial paper. So promissory note and commercial paper are basically the same thing, but it's an interesting thing. Why? Promissory note is actually, it's called promissory note when a company buys something from another company and with promissory notes. But sometimes company A can issue promissory notes without buying anything. they issue promissory notes just to borrow short term from the market, from the financial market. And in that context, it's called commercial paper. So it's the promissory note, and promissory note and commercial paper are the same thing. But if they issue, if they issue it to pay for the purchase they made, it's called promissory note. If they just issued it to borrow money short term, commercial paper. Doesn't matter. So basically, it's the loan, and then so here's an example, and I've been telling you the reason we did simple interest rate is basically to do the simple discount, right? To do the simple discount, because in reality, you hardly see lending. I mean, you hardly see the examples of simple interest rate, right? So here's the thing. I think this was the example from. Where did I got that example from? I think it is probably something like this. Something like this. But let me. So principal, you have a promissory note of the with $300,000 face value, and it's paying interest. It pays 10% interest. 10% interest rate is, of course, all the rates are annual, but this promissory note maturity on the promissory note is 180 days. 180 days is half a year, right? Isn't that right? 180 days is half a year. So if we convert it into years, is 0.49. And so I believe we are using exact interest here. H26. What is an H26? Yeah. So it's, exact interest here. So then the future value on this promissory note is, it's not a difficult thing. We all know. The future value is principal times 1 plus R times T. Okay? Hit enter. Now, you were holding it for a while. I mean, normally, nobody, some companies, if they are really, tight with cash, then as soon as they receive the promissory note, they take it to the bank. Okay? And then they factor it, they sell it. In the video, I had a very lengthy explanation about where the word factor comes from, but I'm not gonna. I will skip it here. Sometimes, but unless you are really stripped of cash, so unless you are very urgently needing cash, you don't. Generally, you will hold it until maturity and collect. Now, the interest alone is like almost $15,000. Why wouldn't you hold on to it until maturity? You would. It's just half a year. But then sometimes things don't go as well as expected. Sometimes you run into some cash flow shortage, some unexpected issues. So 60 days later. So on day 61, then you will have 120 days left until maturity. Isn't that right? You will have 120 days left until maturity. So you took it to the bank and you sold it, or you factored it. but the bank applied 12%. Bank applied 12% discount rate. So then, what is the proceeds and what is the bank discount? What's your cut and what is the bank's cut? Not a difficult thing. This is the future value that you will receive if you, if you hold it to maturity. But then you have to discount it for the remaining 120 days, which is 0.33 year. So during for that time, you will have to. The bank applies 12% discount rate, and so then you get, out of this, you receive this, and then the difference is bank's cut, right? The bank will take this. 12,419 is the bank's cut. So bank is basically, the bank is taking over this promissory note and holding it for 120 days. The bank is also taking the risk, right? Risk of default, in other words, risk of the default of the issuer. But of course, then, as I said, if the issuer of the promissory note is a well-known company, in other words, if it has a good credit record, a good credit, excellent credit rating, then the default risk is relatively low. Then they don't apply high discount rate. And however, the issuer, if the issuer has very bad credit rating, then they will apply a high discount rate to compensate for that risk, right? But no matter how safe or risky the issuer is, the bottom line is the bank won't apply any discount rate that's lower than 10%, lower than the interest rate. Why? If you think about it, if you apply the discount rate as interest rate, then they will be really splitting the interest they will be simply splitting the interest, right, of this almost $15,000. They will be splitting it exactly by the ratio of the time. In other words, 1/3, they will out of 180 days, 60 days, the company was holding it for 60 days. And then after that, the bank is holding it for 120 days. So the ratio will be just 1:2. Isn't that right? And then if you use the same discount rate as the interest rate, you will be doing nothing more than just splitting this $15,000 by the factor of 1/3 and 2/3. That's all. I mean, you might think, what's wrong with that? I mean, isn't it fair? Yeah, it may seem fair to you. It may seem fair to the company that was, factoring this promissory note. But actually, from the bank's perspective, bank is not in the business to be fair. Actually, they would, in other words, they want to skew it. I mean, they want to make more out of this if possible. So they want to skew it more in their favor. They will skew it more in their favor. And on top, even if this company has, even if the issuer of the promissory note has excellent credit rating, they're not going to apply lower or discount rate or equal discount rate as 10%. They will try to skew it more into their favor. Okay. Now, the second, so I think this is second one. Okay, that's. I think it was this. Oh, now slightly. Okay, something like this. Jane Long buys 10,000 13-week Treasury bill at 6%. What is our effective rate? Okay, we need to talk about the effective interest rate. Now, Treasury bill is 13-week Treasury bill is like 3 month, 3 month Treasury. So Treasury bill is what the U.S. Treasury Department is selling. It's a short-term borrowing by the U.S. Treasury Department. Okay, and if she buys it at 6%, this means the discount rate is 6%. She pays, in other words, she pays less than 10,000. 10,000 is the face maturity value. That's what you get at maturity. But it's 13-week later, so it's a kind of zero coupon bond. In other words, non-interest bearing. So she gets to buy it at discount of 6%. Then think about it. 6% discounted 6%. So it will be less than $10,000. Let's say it's $9,000. Then 13 weeks later, you redeem. I mean, actually, the Treasury bill is redeemed by the Treasury Department, but you paid 9,000. 13 weeks later, you collect 10,000, right? So there's no zero coupon bond or non-interest bearing. My tongue is twisted because my throat is so tired. Non-interest bearing notes pay no interest, but instead, because it is sold at deep discount, you're making Jane Long will be making $1,000 by holding it for 13 weeks. Okay, so this is instead of interest, that's what they get from non-interest bearing notes. Okay, so anyway, so we go back to so let's make it 10,000. And was it 6%? I guess it was 6%. 13 weeks. So this one is not in weeks, but 13 weeks is like 90 days. So we'll just consider this 13 weeks is 3 months, right? So it's roughly 90 days. Time, if it is ordinary age 25, ordinary, right? It's not the same. It's not the same. So here, it's not the same example. I'm sorry. This one is interest bearing. There's a 66% interest, and the discount rate is 18%. So it's not the same example. So you don't need to do this all over again. All you need to do is, I basically copied. Now where you drag it, no, what's this? And then drag it down. Okay, so you find, in this case, what's the proceeds and what's the bank discount. Let's think about the effective interest rate. So what is the effective interest rate? You remember this is Jane Long example. Yes, this is the Excel for the web does not support running or interacting with OLE objects. Okay, there was a what this is. There was a formula there created by math equation editor. And the equation, it's not supporting it. So let me. I'm sure you remember. I'm sure you do remember, right? That the B is P times D times T, right? And in that example, you're borrowing 10K, but this 10K breaks down into the principal breaks down into D and B. And I told you if it breaks down into 9K and then 1K, so you're basically, you want to borrow 10K, so you went to Godfather, the mob boss, and you asked for, a loan, and Don Corleone, the Marlon Brando, the Godfather, said, "Okay, we'll give you a loan, 10K, but we'll have to take the interest of 1K up front." So you receive 9K, and then you pay back 10K. So basically, they make they make interest of 1K that way, and then this and I told you discount rate in this case, discount rate is 10%, but in terms of interest rate, this is interest you pay upfront. In terms of interest rate, I told you it's called effective interest rate. It's like 11.11%, right? Why? It's exactly for the same reason, because you paid 1K for borrowing 9K, right? You paid 1K interest for borrowing 9K. So if you take the ratio, it's 11.11. So that's called effective interest rate. But then here's one thing that wasn't, considered, or that wasn't accounted for. What about this time? That was for how long? Well, I simply assumed it was 1 year. If it is 1 year, yes, it's really 11.0. But what if this was 60 days? What if this is 60 days? So then, what do? Of course, it's the same thing. You have to make adjustment for that. So in other words, whereas I'm going to have to add one more layer. Okay. Oh, hide this one. Okay. Oh, no. So, because B P times D times T, and our B is 1K, P is 9K. It's like you are borrowing only 9K and then pay back 10K. So they are making, right? So you have already paid, interest of 1K up front. And then times 10%. And what was the time? 60 over 360, right? 60 days. So then if you do this, right, of course, this is 1 over 6, right? And 10% of 1 over 6, whatever. 1 over 6 is 0.1667 or something like that. I can easily calculate. But 10% of that, the whole thing will become 0.0. Ah, 0. The whole factor will be 0.01667, right? Now, think about it. What we want to know is if this is if I'm solving for D, of course, just like if I'm solving for D, just like in case of interest, right? I will basically divide B by P times T, right? Remember that when because interest is P times R times T. If you want R, right, you'll have to divide it by P times T, right? But here, this P is actually this P is actually D, isn't it right? Because 9K, the 9K that you get is the proceeds. It's not the principal, but the proceeds. In other words, remember, the principal is 10K. You wanted to get 10K, but you could get only 9K because they took one interest up front, right? Of course, you will eventually have to pay back 10K. That's the principal. But what you actually received was only 9K. That is D. So if you find the ratio between the two, just like what you did for interest rate, this is called this is called effective interest rate, effective rate. Okay, so think about it, if this T is 1, if it is 1 year, let's say you're paying 1K interest for borrowing 9K. So it will be exactly 11.11%. But you are you're borrowing it for only 60 days. So if you paid 1K for borrowing 9K for 60 days, which is 1 over 6, right, or 0.116, then that's how you find the effective rate. Okay, so with that in mind, let's go back to our, what time is it, by the way? Okay, we're almost running out of time. It's we still have about 10 minutes, so good. I guess we can do this. Uh, we still have tomorrow to do this, but so tomorrow, what we are going to do tomorrow, uh, when there are examples where the time is given as calendar dates, and if time is given as calendar date, it's not a big deal. It's not a challenge. But let's do this first. So if you want to find the effective rate here, so what do? You'll need to divide B, which is this. Come on, where's my cursor? No, B, G. Yeah, divided by open parenthesis and D times. This is time, right? That was already 120 days divided by 360. There you go. Hit enter. 12.49. So you see what I told you. I already told you that the effective interest rate it's bound to be. I mean, by the mathematical construct, it's bound to be slightly higher than the discount rate. Okay, so it's greater than the discount rate, and it's the same thing here. You can just, but we know better. We can just drag it down. If you drag it down, yeah, effective rate is greater than the discount rate. All right. Any questions so far? Any questions? Okay, let me see.
Professor?
Yes, Elizabeth. Yeah, Elizabeth. Yeah,
No,
go ahead.
this is Shirley. I'm sorry.
I'll have my
Okay,
hand up
sure.
too, but you can go first.
All right.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Elizabeth. I'm sorry.
No,
Yeah,
it's
Elizabeth.
okay. Professor,
Okay,
I just
whoever.
wanted to,
Yeah,
Professor,
go ahead. Yeah,
I
yeah.
just wanted to let you know, I just joined. I was hospitalized. I have my letter. I'm going to send you. Also, is there some more details you can give us on the homework? Because I don't know if I speak for the entire class, but it's a little hard to understand with just what you sent out. So we were just wondering if you can give us a little more detail so we can understand what we're doing better. Yeah, lecture videos also, but it's a little bit still confusing.
Listen, what detail are you talking about? The homework, as far as the homework is, what problems are the homeworks? It's in the instruction. It's in the instruction, and how to do these problems. You need to study the lecture videos, right? And I already told you the main lecture videos that are longer than that are already older than 5 days. You can find them in my YouTube channel, and the recordings of the live sessions are always posted in recordings of the live sessions are posted in our course materials. So here in the topics folder, you won't be able to see the ones that are grayed out, but you can find them in the my YouTube channel. But the last 2 days, the live session recordings are there. Today's recording will be also posted. So you study them, right? How to do the homeworks, they are all covered. It's all explained in my lecture videos. Okay, and who was that? Shirley was asking. Shirley, you asked a question, right? You had a question.
Yes. When you was discussing the 13-week treasury bill, is
Mm-hmm.
that considered a a non-interest bearing or a bearing
Yes,
interest?
yes, you're right. It's non-interest bearing. 13-week Treasury note is non-interest bearing. I think this is this example, and that example is actually this one. This one is, $10,000 principal or maturity value, discount rate 6%, 13 weeks. You can, I don't know. This one is already solved, but I don't know if you're getting what you're getting is, the file that's posted there, the file that you're getting has these, cleaned out, or if it is filled, but but my lecture video is all talk, going over, talking about that. Okay. All righty.
Okay,
Somebody also.
thank you.
All righty. All righty. So that's it for today. And I will see you guys. It's 5:09, so we have about 5 more minutes. But I guess unless you have any more questions, I think I will call it a day.
Professor, I
Yeah,
have a question.
yeah, Sade, is it
It's Sadie.
Sade?
Sadie.
Sadie, okay. Yeah,
It's
Sadie, it's better. Sadie sounds better because the singer Sade, that's just unfounded. I mean, how could it be pronounced the Sade? I always felt uncomfortable.
it doesn't make sense to me either.
Yeah.
It's
All right, go ahead.
you put it up on Blackboard, but it's the Zoom link for like your after class. When I click on
Yeah.
it, it doesn't let me go. It's saying I have to be verified, but I verified everything with my Zoom, and when I click on the link, it doesn't let me go.
I don't know. I mean, there's no password. As long as you are, there's no password. So as long as you are, it's just, open. The thing is, uh, I in the email or here in the course information, I specifically stated that you need to schedule an appointment because it's not just walk in because it's only 30 minutes. There is always someone. Today someone is already scheduled there. Tomorrow there is always already someone scheduled. So
Oh, okay. Oh,
I
yeah.
cannot, yeah, and I cannot accommodate, I cannot accommodate two people in 30 minutes.
Okay.
So that's why you need to send me an email to schedule an appointment.
All right. That
But
makes
as far as the Zoom link is concerned,
okay.
it there's no.
No, I know what I did wrong. I didn't make an appointment. I was just clicking on it.
No,
My
no, no. It's not the appointment. It's not the appointment. Even without an appointment, if you just walk in, there's no way it will automatically, shut you out because, as I said, there's no password, right?
Yes.
So there's no password. But the thing is, you need to sign in with this SSO. You understand? You cannot sign in. You cannot sign in with Facebook or Google or with your email, but you have to sign in with SSO. I don't know what that stands for, but for BMCC, for CUNY, there is a way. The CUNY has its own um, uh, Zoom site. So if with your CUNY email or BMCC email, uh, you sign in with SSO, and then it's BMCC hyphen CUNY at zoom.us or something like that, and then you can sign in with BMCC email.
Okay.
I don't know what you are trying. If you are trying with your Gmail or all this, no, no. How it cannot recognize your personal emails. Okay, you have to sign in with SSO. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. All right, unless there is any further questions, uh, the class is dismissed, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Okay?
Thank you,
Take care,
Professor.
everyone. All right, you're welcome. All right, I'll stop recording.